everybody. Welcome back to the Rams Review podcast. It's very much transfer season, I think. This is my third day in a row doing a transfer recording. And today, another very exciting one, as I am joined by Kevin Harper from the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast. And it's a really interesting link here, as the Rams have been linked with a striker from, of course, Luton, Carlton Morris, rumoured to be of interest to Derby. One of multiple striker links that have popped up in the last couple of days, with Patrick Agyemang from Charlotte FC now linked to. I'm sure Corey will have that one covered with his MLS contacts. But Kevin, great to speak to you, mate.
And you, thanks for having me on.
So, obviously didn't end the way you'd hoped last season. Really disappointing season for Luton. But how did Carlton Morris fare over the course of 9 months or so?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult really for him because obviously halfway through it, we had a change of manager, change of approach, change of style, things like that. He's very much the focal point. He was the vice captain in our Premier League season, became captain once Tom Lockyer had his heart scare. And I kind of get the feeling that it all weighed a little heavy on him. So his numbers last season weren't as good as he would have liked. I don't think he got to double figures in the league. Whereas the season before, when we were in the Championship, he got 20 goals. So there was a clear drop off. A lot of people sort of attribute that to having played in the Premier League and come back down again, and the sort of the fallout from that. But I think it was a little bit more than that. I think there was the burden of responsibility that just weighed heavy on his shoulders and impacted his game. Few injuries along the way as well. I mean, clearly at Derby away late on in the season, he was clearly hampered by an injury, wasn't he? Ended up going off in that game with a thigh issue, it looks like. So injuries towards the end of the season hurt as well. But all in all, I mean, he's a fantastic servant for the club, and it will be a shame to lose him, albeit relegation means that this is going to have to happen for us.
Yeah, I mean, just looking into his numbers from last year, 8 goals, compared to 20 in the previous Championship season, 11 in the Premier League as well. So there was clearly some pedigree there before that drop off. That class, you would hope, is permanent. One thing I am noticing here is comparing the 2 Championship seasons he had for Luton. It's not only was there a big drop off in goals, but also in shots. So last season he took just 64 compared to 115 in his 20-goal season. That to me points to perhaps a lack of service as well. Was there just a lot less in terms of chance creation last season? Could that have been a factor?
I think the big thing was the last Championship season, Luton were a team on the up, thriving, going forward, attacking, not really anything to lose. Still the underdogs, even though we finished third in that season. There weren't many games that Luton fans were going into thinking, cool, we're going to absolutely dominate this, Whereas obviously last season, coming out of the Premier League, it was exactly the opposite. Luton fans are thinking, well, we should be dominating teams, and it never really happened. The team struggled. There was a lack of creativity. The obvious in-between caveat was Ross Barkley in the Premier League. He was absolutely awesome. You're never going to see him in the Championship. And it certainly took us until Matt came in. And Matt came in January for us to get any sort of creativity back in the side. Alfie Doughty, big creator of chances for us, spent 3 months out injured from November through to February. That obviously didn't help. Carlton's an aerial threat. He needs crosses coming into the box. And that's kind of where we've kind of failed a little bit. Our end product is being terrible. Matt's not a manager who wants crosses coming into the box as his sort of modus operandi. He did go down that route because that's what the squad needed. But I get the feeling that a Matt Bloomfield side is going to play with a front three and he's not going to have crosses coming into the box. You're going to have to work your chances. So it all makes sense that Carlton leaves. But yeah, in terms of the numbers, if you get 3 seasons ago Carlton, then you've got a fantastic player. If you get last season, who knows? But from what I saw of Derby in that game against us late last season, there's going to be a lot of balls coming into the box, and that's generally where Carlton Morris is at his best.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is again, like what you said about Matt Bloomfield, John Eustace, I think he's going to want to change how he plays slightly. He said last night at the fans forum that he wants to go back to his preferred 4-2-3-1 rather than the 3-5-2. Um, and, there'd be a bit of a shift there. So we tried to play a little bit more on the front foot. But I think that big focal point is still going to be a key factor when you look at the profiles of strikers not only being linked, but also Lars Jørgen Salvesen in the squad at the moment. Um, and if you look at Carlton Morris, as you say, massive aerial threat. If I just throw another number in there, because why not? He's in the top 3% on FBref for aerials won. Uh, I mean, that tells you a lot. That's something that John Eustace was talking about as one of the basics last night of needing players to win their duels. He has excellent, excellent numbers there. And for somebody to come and kind of battle up front and then hopefully, if he doesn't score himself, bring others into play and, sort of just drag the team up the pitch in that respect through the odd long ball. Is that something we can definitely expect from him?
Definitely, yeah. The one thing that improved in his 3 years here was his hold-up play. When he first arrived, he wasn't particularly great at that. He was fantastic getting into the box and when the chances came, putting the ball in the back of the net. But the longer play went on, particularly in that Premier League season where Ross Barkley was giving him good service into his feet rather than into his head, then he was able to hold defenders off, get it out wide and, create from there sort of thing. So he's definitely improved in the hold-up play. He can definitely play the solo forward role with sort of pace around him. The longer he's been at Luton, he's started to come deeper as well and get on the ball. He's, if you'd liken him to sort of Harry Kane doing that as well, can come deep and sort of spray the ball out wide and things. So he's definitely developed his game, not necessarily to the benefit of his goal scoring, but to his all-round profile. He's definitely a better all-round striker leaving us, assuming he does leave us, than the one that we signed 3 years ago.
Yes. So again, I'm just thinking with the links of some exciting wingers, great brings them into play, and sort of some of the threat comes through them as well. Really interesting. I just want to ask you about a little bit more about that with his passing because I'm seeing here based on not only what I've watched of him, but again looking at these numbers, really high number of passes attempted per 90. Interestingly, a high amount of progressive passes, but low pass completion. So again, it almost seems like those progressive passes are are going to come off every so often, but there's something, I mean, he's in the 11th percentile for a pass completion percentage. Are there a lot of ambitious passes that don't come off, or is he just tightly marked and can't, and has struggled to make a kind of 3 yard pass? What's the situation there?
Yeah, so he is tightly marked. He's clearly the focal point of our attack. He usually has both centre halves that he occupies, and that generally frees up Elijah Adebayo at Luton for him to be the one who sort of goes on and gets all the chances and things. I don't think there's anything wrong with his passing. I think the one thing from, if you judge him on his passing last season, we basically became a whole new team in January once Rob left. Lots of January signings came in and Matt wanted to get forward, but the squad didn't really believe in what he was doing until sort of March time. So I think those kind of numbers would be influenced by just how poor we were in that first 6 months of the season. I think if you use those numbers from sort of March onwards, where it really clicked under Matt, then I think those numbers would be gradually getting higher and higher when wingers knew exactly where they were expected to be and things like that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's just an anomaly looking at it. It's quite a low, and I thought let's check that one out and see where we go with that. Um, yeah, it's. I mean, what would you think he can do at Derby? What would your kind of expectations be of him if he makes the move?
Yeah, I think he'll be perfectly fine. I think he'll work out pretty well. Again, from I can only base on what I saw of Derby in that away game on what is it, Good Friday, wasn't it? That he'll fit into that style perfectly. He is a goal scorer. He can still score goals. There's absolutely no problem with any of that. I do think the responsibility of captaincy weighed down on him a little bit, particularly as we were absolutely atrocious at times last season as well. Not necessarily all of his fault. And also, he's the best mates with Tom Lockyer, and he hasn't come out and said it publicly. But I suspect what happened to Tom on the pitch at Bournemouth impacted him an awful lot more than he's let on. He's a good guy in that respect. He'll give absolutely everything. I've never known Morris come off of a pitch having not given 110%. And yeah, I think he'll score goals. If he plays the whole season, goes injury free, I would be surprised if Morris doesn't get 15 goals next season.
Yeah, and do you know what? Again, looking at just the contrast of the numbers, as well as what I've seen of him previously, I'd agree. Because as I say, I think the lack of shots relative to goals kind of correlates. So I think if Derby can create, I think he'll find that form again. But yeah, you talk about leadership and the captaincy weighing heavily on it, but at the same time, it feels like he kind of can lead by example and being that good guy, good character for the dressing room. John Eustace spoke about this again at the fans forum last night about having a lack of leaders in the squad when he came in and needing good characters in there for the dressing room. Whilst, any sort of captaincy role might be too much pressure for him, would you expect him to kind of be able to lead from the front even without the armband?
Absolutely, yeah. Second he walked into our dressing room, he was a leader. That season that we got promoted to the Premier League, he was a natural leader. He wasn't the captain. Tom Lockyer was the captain, and I think maybe had he took the captaincy at Luton from anyone other than Tom in circumstances completely different to the way that it happened, then maybe it wouldn't have weighed on his mind. But I always sensed that there was a responsibility that he had to live up to Tom's sort of expectations and Tom's captaincy. I mean, Tom was a brilliant, brilliant captain for us. Unbelievable. And I think he kind of, rather than captain in his own style, he tried to be Tom as a captain. And obviously, they play two different roles. One's a strong centre half, the other one's a centre forward. And I kind of think that that's a problem. I'd have no issues. I've never had any issues with Morris's character. I've spoken to him countless times. We've had him on our podcast 2 or 3 times. He's a really great guy. He is a genuinely great guy who loves football, just wants to score goals. He'd done it hard in his early stages. I think he told me he had 2 ACL, only one, and 2 long-term injuries. So he sort of takes every day for what it is, and he just wants to play football and score goals. And I'm certain that he'll do that again. It just fizzled out here last season. He's not the only one it fizzled out for. I think there was a real come down from the Premier League that the whole club struggled to deal with. And yeah, I think away from here, away from the kind of pressures of expectation, not expectation, pressures of success that we've had and having to live up to that, I think he'll thrive again. I really do.
Yeah, you mentioned injuries there. Are those kind of long time ago, or is that a recent worry? Just to double check that, because I wasn't aware of anything recent, but have I missed it?
Yeah, no, he hasn't had any long-term injuries with us. As I said, he was clearly carrying an injury towards the end of last season, but that was just sheer workload. He never missed a game last season. Everyone else around him was injured. Elijah Adebayo in about February or March did his ACL. So then Morris was literally the focal point for the remainder of that season, and games were coming thick and fast at that point as well, weren't they? So it was just I would think it was just wear and tear, that thigh thing that he had. He was clearly hampered by it on Good Friday, wasn't he? And the last few games of the season, I would imagine with 6 weeks off, him pretty absolutely good to go.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is good to hear. Given the injuries last year, availability is definitely an ability and a key one given the way injuries piled up. So yeah, I think for Derby to have a big focal point who can be consistent is going to be key to not only staying up again but building on it. And hopefully, if he signs, Carlton Morris can be that guy. So yeah, I mean, as I say, really excited with this signing again. We're in that time of year where I start to get really excited about basically anyone links. I start to do some digging, and it's no different. And I think after this chat, we see a really hardworking player actually in the top 25% of forwards for defensive actions as well, which will be good for pressing out of possession as Eustace wants to bring that in. I think, yeah, a top pickup. Anything on that? Anything on his out of possession work?
Runs his socks off. Absolutely leaves nothing out there. Again, I think that's what contributed to, the wear and tear towards the end of the season. He will give absolutely everything. Defenders won't have a minute's peace when he's around. If you guys have got the ball, they'll need to notice where he is because he's brilliant in the box. Very, very composed from the penalty spot as well. If you need a penalty taker, don't recall him missing a penalty for Luton, and he must have taken well in excess of a dozen. In fact, he's actually come out and said, if I can score a penalty in a playoff final shootout at Wembley, there isn't another penalty that's going to sort of make me nervous or anything like that. So that's fair enough. Very, very good penalty taker. Out of possession, yeah, he can hassle defenders. As I say, he can drop deep and sort of form that extra man in midfield should you need him to. And defensively from corners, he is very, very good at getting the ball away from goal. We situated him on the front post at corners, not on the post, but sort of the man towards the first man, so to speak. And the amount of corners he got rid of was so helpful to us. So yeah, you've got a good all-round player. If I had a slight concern, it would be that wear and tear injury towards the end of last season could be something that might linger again if he's played every single game of every single week. But listen, he's a 29-year-old player who's played an awful lot of football, so he's going to get those kind of things, isn't he? But in terms of a striking role, in terms of what I saw of Derby on Good Friday, he seems a natural fit to me, mate.
Brilliant. That is exactly what we want to hear. But yeah, Kevin, thank you very much for your time. Just remind us where people can find you, and I'll try and find get Corey to put some links and so on in the kind of descriptions and so on of this. But yeah, just remind us where people can find you.
Yeah, I'm the host of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, so we cover all the Luton games.
Awesome stuff. Good luck for the season. Hopefully you can bounce straight back. And yeah, as I say, thank you very much for your time this morning.
You're welcome, Jack. Take care, mate.
You too. All that's left to say for the listeners and viewers, up the Rams.